The scream didn't come from inside the house, it came from me. One moment I was rinsing a plate in the kitchen sink, the next I was choking on smoke, so thick it poured through the vents like it had been waiting. The fire alarm blared above me, shrill and useless, as a loud crack shook the back wall, like something exploding. My heart dropped into my stomach. "Lila," I called out, my voice breaking before it could even reach the hallway. I spun toward the sound, but the smoke was everywhere now. Thick, black, suffocating. My hands trembled as I reached for the doorknob, burning hot, to the touch. I ripped my shirt sleeve down to protect my skin and yanked the door open. Flames. They were crawling up the back wall of the house, licking the ceiling, roaring like something alive. The hallway to Lila's room was already swallowed in black. I couldn't see her. I couldn't hear her. But I knew she was still inside. I ran outside, coughing, my lungs burning. The heat followed me. Neighbors were starting to emerge, shouting, pointing. I screamed, "My daughter's in there," over and over until my throat went raw. I tried to run back in twice, only to be pulled back by two sets of arms I didn't recognize. "You can't go in there," someone yelled. "The fire department is on their way." But I didn't care. I didn't care about anything except that my baby, my Lila, was in her room, probably curled up with her sketchbook and headphones, unaware that the house was turning into an inferno around her. Then I saw it, her bedroom window glowing orange from inside. The curtains caught first, then the frame, then the glass cracked with a pop that stopped my heart. I screamed again. It wasn't supposed to be like this. We were safe here. This was our home. This was her safe place. And as the sirens finally wailed in the distance, getting closer, I looked toward the sidewalk, and there she was, Karen, standing calmly on her porch, arms crossed, watching it all burn. And I knew, in that moment, she had lit the match. Cut to black. You won't believe what she did next. Before the fire, before the smoke, before the betrayal, we had found peace. Lila was born with a rare neurological condition that made mobility a daily challenge. Her muscles didn't always listen to her brain, and her balance could betray her at any moment. But what her body lacked, her spirit more than made up for. She was the kind of child who greeted the world with wide eyes and open arms. She wore mismatched socks on purpose, gave her stuffed animals names like Professor Fluff and Miss Pancake, and had a giggle that sounded like it could lift the rain off a gray sky. She didn't walk easily, but she dreamed in leaps. And when she couldn't run with the other kids, she invented games of color and sound that turned any quiet room into a universe of imagination. We moved into the HOA neighborhood when she was 6, not because we wanted the polished lawns or the matching mailboxes, but because the house on the corner had everything she needed. A ramp built right into the front porch, wide hallways for her mobility scooter, a spare room flooded with natural light, perfect for her art and therapy exercises. It was the kind of place where we could finally exhale. After years of apartments with stairs, narrow doorways, and pitying glances, this house felt like a promise. Here, she can just be a kid. And she was. From the very first day, she made it her own. She painted butterflies on the window with washable paint. She taped glittery stars to the inside of her closet so it would feel like space. Her favorite spot was the garage. We transformed it into her art studio and sensory haven. Soft mats, a small shelf of her supplies, string lights across the ceiling, and music always playing in the background. She called it her calm corner. And after hard days, bad leg pain, frustrating therapy, or being ignored at school, she would roll herself in there, put on her headphones, and draw for hours. That little corner gave her control in a world that so often took it from her. She loved that house. Every inch of it. She'd scoot around on her knees through the living room, race her dog in the hallway, and lean out her window just to say hi to the delivery guy. She'd watch the sunset from the back deck, wrapped in a fleece blanket, whispering to the stars as if they were old friends. And at night, she'd rest her hand against the wall beside her bed and whisper, "Thank you, house," before falling asleep, as if she knew that place was more than drywall and furniture. It was sanctuary. Our neighbors didn't all understand her, but most were kind enough, or at least polite. Except for one, Karen. Even in those early days, she watched us with a stare that felt clinical. She never waved, never smiled. She frowned at the therapy van. She sighed loudly when Lila's scooter accidentally grazed the sidewalk edge near her grass. But we ignored her because Lila had found a place where she could be herself, and no glare or snide comment was going to take that away from her. Birthdays in that house were legendary. We'd cover the walls with paper so she could draw on them without getting in trouble. She once painted an entire story, start to finish, across the living room wall, a tale of a wingless butterfly who saves her garden from a flood by using her heart as a raft. We left it there for weeks because that was her magic. She didn't just live in that house. She made it breathe, even during the harder seasons, when her pain got worse, when her anxiety about school flared up, that house held her. She'd sit by the window during storms and hum to the thunder. She never feared being alone because the space around her had become part of her identity. She said it herself once. Home is like a blanket you don't have to carry. You just live inside it. So, when that fire stole it from her, stole her safe place, her calm corner, her stories on the walls, it wasn't just a tragedy. It was a kind of violence that went deeper than flames and ash. It was a betrayal of the one place in the world that had never told her she was too much, too different, or too broken. Karen didn't just set a fire. She destroyed the only place my daughter ever felt fully free. When we first moved into the neighborhood, Karen was just a name on the mailbox across the street, a neatly trimmed hedge, a porch always swept, and a woman who rarely made eye contact. She wasn't rude, not exactly. Just cold, distant, the kind of neighbor who watched without waving, whose blinds moved just slightly when anyone walked by, whose garden looked like it had never seen a single unscheduled leaf fall. At first, we chalked it up to personality. Not everyone is warm. Maybe she was private, shy. Maybe in time, she'd warm up to us like most neighbors eventually did. But Karen wasn't just private, she was precise, rigid, the kind of person who lived and breathed by the HOA handbook like it was scripture. And we quickly realized that her rule book left no room for people like us, especially not for Lila. It started small, barely noticeable at first, a tight-lipped stare when the therapy van pulled up on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A huff when Lila's scooter let out a high-pitched beep while backing up. She once came outside with a broom and began sweeping her already spotless walkway the moment we started unpacking Lila's ramp. There was no hello, no welcome, just silence and the sharp sweep, sweep, sweep of judgment. Then came the notes. The first was folded and taped to our mailbox. It read, "Friendly reminder. HOA guidelines prohibit permanent installations visible from the street. Please remove unsightly ramp when not in use." I stared at the words in disbelief. Unsightly? The ramp was essential for Lila to enter and leave the house. We had followed all the legal processes, even submitted a modification request to the HOA board. But Karen didn't care. To her, necessity didn't matter, only aesthetics. Next, she complained about the wind chimes Lila had picked out herself, tiny copper butterflies that jingled softly outside her bedroom window. "They're disruptive," Karen wrote in another note. "Some of us work from home and don't want to hear your decorations all day." That same week, the chimes were ripped down during the night. Coincidence? Maybe. But the screws were still in the wall. The butterflies were gone. As the weeks passed, the complaints became bolder, more frequent. Noise, trash bins, unapproved garden ornaments, which was Lila's solar-powered turtle light. We tried addressing it diplomatically, even speaking directly with HOA, but the board only offered vague responses. We must enforce consistency for all residents. And Karen knew it. She used the rules like weapons, turning each one into a reason we didn't belong. The real breaking point came during an HOA community meeting. We rarely attended, but that month we wanted to advocate for better accessibility, things like curb ramps, smoother sidewalk transitions. Lila came with us, proudly holding her sketchbook with ideas she'd drawn to make walks more fun for everyone. When we spoke, some nodded politely. Karen didn't. She stood up and said, loud enough for the room to still, "We all sympathize, but one child shouldn't change the character of the entire neighborhood. This has been a peaceful community for years, and I think some of us feel disrupted." Disrupted. She didn't even say Lila's name, just labeled her a disruption. Like she was noise, like she was clutter. After that, everything shifted. Karen no longer hid behind passive-aggressive notes. Her disdain became open, unfiltered. When we walked outside, she muttered things under breath. When Lila drew chalk butterflies on the driveway, Karen hosed them down while she was still coloring. Once, I overheard her telling a neighbor, "It's like living next to a daycare with no closing hours." I wanted to scream, to confront her. But every time we tried to push back, we were met with more warnings from HOA. Let's all try to de-escalate. Maybe consider a more discreet ramp. Noise travels. Perhaps your daughter could play indoors? It became clear Karen wasn't just a bad neighbor. She was a woman obsessed with control, with order, and with erasing anything that didn't fit her perfectly curated world. She wasn't just cold anymore. She was dangerous, and we didn't realize just how dangerous until the night flames danced against our daughter's bedroom window. It wasn't enough for Karen to glare from behind her curtains or leave passive-aggressive notes in our mailbox anymore. Something had shifted in her completely, like a switch had been flipped. She went from cold to calculated, from watchful to weaponized. Every move we made, every sound, every inch of space Lila occupied seemed to provoke her, and she began to show it, not through screaming matches or outright threats, but through something far worse. Slow, deliberate cruelty masked as concern. It started with the garden. Lila loved her flower patch. It wasn't much, just a corner of the yard where she'd planted marigolds, lavender, and some wildflowers from a seed mix she picked out herself. It was her bee-hotel, as she called it, a place for buzzing friends to visit. Every day, she'd water them carefully, naming each bloom and talking to them as if they could hear. One morning, we woke to find the garden trampled. Every single flower crushed, the soil dug up like someone had kicked through it. At first, we thought maybe a dog had gotten loose. But there were no paw prints, just boot tracks, deep and deliberate. I walked across the street to Karen's porch, shaking with rage, and asked her, calmly, if she'd seen anything. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Maybe that part of the yard was never meant to be used. Some people just overstep." No denial, no surprise, just veiled satisfaction. Then came the surveillance. One afternoon, I caught her standing behind her side gate, phone raised, recording Lila as she played in the driveway with sidewalk chalk. When she noticed I was watching, she didn't lower her phone. She just turned and walked back inside. A few days later, Lila asked me why someone had poured water on her drawings when she left them to go inside for a snack. I didn't have the heart to tell her, but we all knew. She filed another complaint that week. This time it was formal. A letter from the HOA, citing a resident concern about the presence of non-compliant visual disturbances, chalk art again, and unauthorized play equipment. The equipment? A foldable plastic table and a beanbag chair Lila used for outdoor therapy. The letter went on to warn us that continued non-compliance may result in community action. We requested a meeting with the board. It was denied. Lila began withdrawing. She stopped drawing outside. She asked if it was okay to laugh in the driveway. One night, as I tucked her in, she whispered, "Does Miss Karen think I'm scary?" That broke something in me. This wasn't just neighbor drama anymore. This was targeted emotional abuse against a child. At the next HOA meeting, I forced myself to go alone. I brought every letter, every dated photo, every record I had. I calmly presented what had happened, the destroyed garden, the harassment, the recording of my child without permission. But before I could finish, Karen stood up. She was composed, smug, and smiling faintly as she addressed the room. "I'm not here to point fingers," she began, "but I do think we need to have an honest conversation about safety. There are mobility ramps, loose cords, items left in common areas. and children who, let's be honest, sometimes aren't being properly supervised, create risks that most of us didn't sign up for. My jaw clenched. She had just accused my daughter of being a safety hazard. The very child who had brought cookies to her porch and drew butterflies in chalk to cheer up the street. My daughter was being turned into a liability, a disruption, a problem to be solved. What chilled me more than her words was the board's reaction. Silence. No one challenged her. No one asked for clarification. The meeting moved on. When I got home that night, I held Lila longer than usual. She was asleep, curled around her stuffed animal, unaware of the storm gathering outside her window. I wanted to protect her, but I could feel it like smoke in the air. Karen wasn't going to stop, not because of rules or empathy or decency. This was personal. She wanted us gone. She wanted Lila erased from her perfectly ordered world. We began filing official complaints. We logged every interaction, installed cameras, contacted disability rights organizations. We even sent a legal letter to the HOA demanding acknowledgement and action. Weeks passed. Nothing came. Their silence spoke louder than any reply could have. And Karen? She began parking her car closer to our property line. She blasted leaf blowers on weekend mornings when Lila was outside. She spread rumors that we were sue-happy and playing the victim. Some neighbors stopped waving. A few crossed the street to avoid us. Slowly, we felt the isolation setting in. She wasn't just cruel anymore. She was systematic. And the worst part? We still didn't realize how far she was willing to go. Not until the night fire danced through our windows and everything we built was reduced to ash. It was the kind of night where everything felt still. The summer air was warm, a little heavy. The neighborhood bathed in that soft orange glow from street lamps. Inside, the house was quiet. Lila had gone to bed early, worn out from an afternoon of sketching in her sensory room. She had drawn a garden full of fireflies and left it on the dining table with a note, "For Mama, so your dreams glow." I remember kissing her forehead, pulling the blanket up to her chin, and hearing her whisper, "I love you to the moon and to all the colors." That was the last moment of peace we would know. I was folding laundry in the living room when I noticed it, a smell, faint at first, almost like someone burning trash. I wrinkled my nose and kept folding, assuming maybe a neighbor had a backyard fire pit going. But within minutes, the smell grew thicker, harsher. There was no mistaking it anymore. That wasn't a grill or firewood. That was something chemical, something dangerous. I stood up fast, my heart racing. I checked the kitchen. Nothing. Checked the laundry room. All clear. But as I neared the front door, I saw it, orange flickering against the glass of the entry window. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. And froze. The side of the house was on fire. Flames were crawling up the exterior wall like living things, devouring the siding with crackling hunger. The trash bins along the fence were already gone, melted into a black, bubbling mess. The flames had leapt onto the dry vines along the gate, and from there, straight toward Lila's window. My heart stopped. Lila. I screamed her name and bolted toward the side of the house, barefoot, unthinking. The heat hit me like a wall. Smoke stung my eyes and throat as I rounded the corner and saw the fire fully engulfing the lower half of her bedroom window. The curtains inside were glowing red, beginning to curl upward. I couldn't see her. I couldn't hear her. Panic overtook every muscle in my body. I grabbed a garden hose, but the water pressure was useless, just a weak stream against a blaze already out of control. I threw it aside and ran to the window, beating on the glass with my fists, yelling her name. I thought about breaking it with a shovel, with my elbow, anything, but the heat was too much. My hands blistered on contact. The glass was bubbling. She was inside. I remember screaming, words, prayers, raw sounds I didn't recognize coming from my own mouth. Then, mercifully, I heard the sirens. Flashing red and blue lights tore down the street, and within seconds, the fire truck screeched to a halt in front of the house. Firefighters jumped out and took control with terrifying speed. One of them pulled me away from the flames. I didn't want to let go. I was still yelling, trying to tell them she was in there, that they had to get her out. I remember my knees hitting the ground and my vision blurring from both smoke and tears. Two firefighters disappeared into the flames with axes and oxygen tanks. It felt like an eternity, those 60 seconds. Then they emerged. One was carrying her, wrapped in a heavy black fire blanket, her legs dangling, face gray with soot, hair wet and tangled. But she was moving. Her arms were twitching. She was coughing. She was alive. I collapsed. Relief poured over me so violently I couldn't even speak. I just reached out as they placed her into the arms of the EMTs. I heard someone say, minor burns, smoke inhalation, possible concussion. Another voice, stable. She's stable. They took her to the ambulance, and I climbed in beside her, cradling her hand, whispering her name over and over again. She looked at me once, eyes unfocused, lips dry, and in a voice so soft I could barely hear, she asked, "Was that thunder?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to lie and tell her it was a storm and everything would be okay. But I couldn't, because I knew it wasn't thunder. It was her. It was Karen. The fire department determined the blaze started outside. Accelerant traces found near the trash bins, deliberately ignited. It was arson. Someone had come to our home in the dark and tried to burn it down with our child inside. And while they didn't say her name, we all knew. We knew, because only one person hated us that much. And she watched it all happen, from her porch, from across the street, unblinking, unmoving. While my daughter nearly died inside the home she loved, that night didn't just steal our house. It scarred everything we believed was still good in the world. By the time the fire was finally out and the smoke had cleared, we were standing in front of the blackened shell of what used to be our home. The house was ruined, walls scorched, windows shattered, Lila's room reduced to ashes. But the real burn came later when the silence from across the street turned into something much more sinister. Karen didn't say a word to us in the aftermath, not even a glance of concern, but she wasted no time speaking elsewhere. The very next day, she posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, shocked by the recent incident. Grateful my home wasn't affected. Please remember to check your wiring and extension cords. House fires can start from the smallest mistake. It was subtle, clean, but deliberate. She was planting doubt. The implication was clear. Maybe we had caused the fire. Maybe it was our fault. Soon after, she was seen speaking with a small group of neighbors outside her house, animatedly talking while gesturing toward the remains of ours. A few nodded. A few didn't. But the damage had begun. That evening, another post appeared, anonymous but all too familiar in tone. It's heartbreaking when tragedy is used for attention. Let's not rush to blame until the fire report is public. And then came the rumors that we overloaded a socket, that Lila's therapy equipment sparked it, that we left a candle unattended in her room. All lies. But lies, when whispered often enough, start to feel like questions. And Karen made sure those questions stuck. When the fire department confirmed it was arson, with signs of accelerant traced near the trash bins and side paneling, Karen's story shifted again. She claimed she wasn't even home that night, that she had been visiting her sister an hour away. She told officers she didn't see anything, hear anything, and was completely devastated by what happened. But surveillance footage from a neighbor showed her porch light turning off just minutes after the fire erupted, suggesting she was home, watching, silent. We handed that footage to authorities. The investigation deepened. Still, Karen acted untouchable. She walked her dog with a lifted chin, laughed with the same group of neighbors who once smiled at Lila, and passed by us with a smirk. Once, while I was gathering salvageable things from the yard, she walked by slowly and muttered under her breath, "Some people just don't belong here." The HOA? Completely silent. No statement. No support. When we requested a community safety meeting, they declined. Pending investigation, they said they wouldn't even issue a warning or acknowledgement. To them, the fire was an inconvenience, not an act of terror. Karen was still a dues-paying resident, and we were a problem too loud to be heard. It became clear She wasn't just trying to burn our house. She was trying to erase our presence entirely and convince everyone else to help her do it. We could have packed up quietly and left, buried the trauma under insurance forms and therapist sessions. But when someone sets your home on fire with your disabled child inside, you don't walk away. You fight, not just for justice, but for the truth. For every whispered doubt Karen tried to spread. For every lie the HOA refused to challenge. For every scar Lila would carry. The first step was finding a lawyer, not just any lawyer, but someone who understood this wasn't just a property case. It was attempted murder, a hate-driven crime wrapped in HOA silence. We found her in a firebrand civil attorney named Eva Mandel, who'd handled arson and disability discrimination cases before. She didn't hesitate. This wasn't an accident, she said after reviewing the fire department's report. They lit it. Let's light them up legally. The fire marshal's findings were clear. Traces of accelerant, most likely gasoline on the siding, the trash bins, and the ground beneath Lila's window. A lighter was found near the fence line. No signs of faulty wiring or appliances. This wasn't neglect. It was intentional. And the security footage from our neighbor's porch camera? It showed Karen's porch light switching off just 4 minutes after flames first appeared. Her claim of not being home was crumbling fast. We filed a civil suit for attempted murder, destruction of property, and endangerment of a minor. Criminal charges were pending investigation, but Karen's arrogant smirk began to fade the moment subpoenas were issued. Still, she tried to spin it, telling neighbors we were blowing things out of proportion, just trying to make a scene for attention, and using our daughter for sympathy. So we went public. With the help of disability rights activists and a local news outlet, we shared our story. Photos of the burned home, Lila's singed drawing, and a mother's voice trembling through raw memory. The headline read, "Disabled Child Narrowly Escapes Arson. Family Blames HOA Harassment." Within hours, it spread. Social media lit up. Strangers from across the country reached out, parents, teachers, survivors of HOA abuse. The shame Karen tried to place on us was turning into a tidal wave of public outrage. We launched a GoFundMe for temporary housing and legal costs. It passed its goal within a week. But more than the donations, it was the comments that kept us going. This could have been my child. I know this kind of HOA hate all too well. Thank you for speaking out. Karen tried to smear us. But now she was facing something she couldn't manipulate, truth in numbers. And this time, she couldn't control the fire. The courtroom was packed, rows of stiff chairs filled with reporters, advocates, silent neighbors, and strangers who had followed our story from the beginning. At the center of it all sat Karen, dressed in beige, her hair neatly curled, her posture immaculate. The same woman who had tried to burn us out of her neighborhood now sat behind a defense table, still wearing her HOA-approved mask of composure. But this time, the world was watching. The charges were serious: attempted murder, arson, and endangerment of a minor. The evidence spoke louder than any witness could. The accelerant traces near the trash bins, the fire marshal's report showing ignition at multiple points, and the damning porch light footage showing Karen was home at the exact time the fire began. Her alibi? Cracked in half. Her lies? Publicly dissected. But what broke the courtroom's air of formality, what made it real, was the moment Lila appeared on the screen. Too young and too traumatized to testify in person, she spoke through a pre-recorded video interview. She was small in her chair, holding her stuffed rabbit, her scar still faint but visible on her cheek. Her voice trembled but didn't break. I woke up and saw fire on the wall. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die. The room fell completely still. Even Karen looked away. Our lawyer, Eva, presented every angle of Karen's long campaign. Each letter, each complaint, each piece of harassment disguised as HOA concern. The jury heard about the destroyed garden, the hosed-down chalk drawings, the surveillance footage, the ignored HOA appeals. What had once been painted as neighborhood tensions was now undeniably exposed as a pattern of hate. Karen's defense scrambled. They tried to reframe the incident as a misunderstanding, then as a terrible coincidence, even as a mentally unstable reaction to stress. But nothing could spin away the fact that a child nearly died, and Karen never lifted a finger to help, only to deny. After days of testimony, the jury left to deliberate. It took less than 3 hours. They returned with a guilty verdict on all counts. Karen didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, stone-faced, as the judge read the charges and announced that she would face a substantial prison sentence. Her illusion of control, the pristine facade she built through board meetings and fake smiles, shattered right there under courtroom lights. She wasn't the voice of the HOA anymore. She was a criminal, and the community, many of whom once ignored our pleas, had no choice now but to see her for what she really was. Not a protector of peace, but the one who lit the match. We left the neighborhood 3 weeks after the trial ended. There was nothing left to salvage, not just in the house, but in the soil, in the silence, in the faces of neighbors who had looked away. What was once our home had become a graveyard of memories scorched black. So, we packed what we could, carried Lila's favorite blanket and her half-melted sketchbook, and drove until the roads felt unfamiliar and the air felt clean. Our new place is smaller, but it feels bigger in all the ways that matter. There's a wraparound porch where Lila sits every afternoon, sketching in the sun. The local fire station came to visit her personally, not to terrify, but to teach, to empower. They gave her a tiny badge and called her their honorary fire captain. She smiled the whole day, though she still flinches when a fire alarm test blares at school. Healing, we've learned, isn't loud or obvious. It's slow. It's quiet. It's choosing to breathe when your chest wants to collapse. Her new room is painted yellow. Not the soft, quiet kind, but bold, almost defiant. She picked it herself. "I want it to look like light," she said, and on the walls, she started drawing butterflies again. But they're different now, stronger, some with wings made of flame. She told me one night, these ones survived the fire. So now, they fly stronger than before. We're not the same family we were before Karen. We're more cautious. We double-check doors. We sleep with the hallway light on. But we're also more resilient. We've seen what hate can do, but we've also seen what truth and community and fire-tested love can overcome. Lila still sleeps with her stuffed rabbit, still spins in socks, still laughs like the sun. But now, she knows what survival means. And every time she draws, she reminds us both, even wings born in fire can still fly. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, if it made you feel anything at all, don't let it end here. No child should ever be in danger just for existing. No family should ever have to fight alone to be heard, seen, or protected. Backhand index pointing right, share this video, leave a comment, and let others know that silence is complicity. Your voice can help stop this from happening again. Bell subscribe to the HOA Stories, where we expose the truth behind the fences and manicured lawns. Real families, real pain, real consequences. Because if we don't tell these stories, Karen gets to rewrite them.